there would be 10 fingers pointing at each other in order to get to that position where they are at. They're Gucci campaigns every single week, okay? I compare myself to photographers that are in their 50s all the freaking time. Okay, let's get it. Hello, welcome back to the Rich Artist Fridays. If you're new here, my name is Sophie and I'm the founder of the Rich Artist Program, a program that I wanted to do because there was so many things that I didn't learn in college. I didn't learn throughout my photography career in the early years, especially when it came to running a successful freelance photography business. And at the same time, being an artist, making the kind of money that I wanted to make, attracting the kind of campaign jobs that I wanted to do, getting to work with the people that I wanted to work with. And at the same time, doing rate negotiations and contract work and outreach. And, so many of you guys out there are, solo entrepreneurs. And I know what that is like. And I wish I would have had somebody that would have taken me by the hand and sort of walked me through some of the things that I had to learn through a lot of trial and error and through many, many years of experience in the industry. So that's what I'm here to share with you guys. And our Rich Artist Fridays are 30-minute quickies. They're the free portion of this program where I just get to throw a lot of inspiration, motivation, tactical tips at you guys in order for you to just sit back, relax, absorb what I have for you guys. And we talk a lot about subjects that you guys are very interested, that is on your minds a lot. And if you ever have a topic that you're like, oh, I wish I got a little bit of input into this certain thing, then like slide into my DMs and ask me to do whatever you want me to talk about. And I'm happy to take suggestions for the topics that we do on Fridays. And before we get into the Rich Artist Friday this week, I wanted to remind you guys that this weekend we're doing the Money Master Workshop, which is 2 hours on Saturday, so tomorrow, and 2 hours on Sunday. And we will be talking about some of the things that I just mentioned, like how to set your prices, how to establish a clientele that actually has the budget to pay you what you want to be making, how to do contract negotiations and rate negotiations, how to write estimates. But then we're also going to look at the mentality side of things a little bit. How can we counteract this sort of starving artist mentality? How can we create a vision for ourselves where we actually earn the money that we want to make in our business? And how can we show up like that when we do finally talk to clients, or whether it's high paying private clients that you're after or actual campaign shoots. Hi, Karina. I'm going to mute you for a second, but I'm so happy you're here. I was just saying that the Money Master Workshop is starting tomorrow and the day after, and you guys can still sign up for it. I'm going to post you guys the link in the chat here. And for everybody that's watching the recording, it's just on my Eventbrite, or you can find it in my bio on my Instagram. And that's going to be so fun. So that's 2 hours tomorrow and then 2 hours on Sunday. And it's just going to be a load of input for you guys that really, really helped me, that I learned through assisting other photographers, being a studio manager, watching them run really, really successful businesses that brought in several $1 million a year. And also just sort of the mentality that they had around getting paid like very, very highly sought after artists that they were. So I find that so fascinating. And I know you guys ask me about that all the time. Like, how can I negotiate? Like, how can I explain to a client that these prices are reasonable when some clients, they might be like, oh my God, that's such an insane amount of money to me. But trust me, there's clients out there that they wouldn't dream of paying you $400 a shoot because they're looking to invest like $10,000 or something like that. So I want you guys to be able to access the clientele that is a good match for you guys. So we'll be talking about that on the weekend. Long intro, and now let's get into it. Today's topic is going to be a photographer's ego, which I am really excited to talk about because it's a little bit, I think, of an unexpected topic for what we've covered so far. And when I was like scheduling the topics, I was thinking, I hope people don't take this the wrong way, in the sense that I'm like here to call all of us out, that we're so full of ourselves and that we all just need to get over ourselves. That's not really what I had in mind with this. So what do I mean when I say ego? I think that is so interesting because so many of us have like the most negative connotation when it even comes to the word ego. And a couple years ago, I read a book and it said, your ego is who you think other people think you are. Your ego is who you think other people think you are. Isn't that mind-blowing when you wrap your mind around that? And we all have an ego, no matter how egotistical or non-egotistical you are. All humans have an ego because we all have a perception of how others perceive us. And I think in the age of social media, that is just like ramped up times 1,000. But I think it's so interesting, especially as photographers, to take a look at who we think other people think we are, because we have a very public facing image, whether it's just your art or you as the artist as well. So many of us identify ourselves with our work so closely because we're so passionate about what we do for a living. Otherwise, we wouldn't have chosen this. And it is who we are at our core as artists, that who we think other people view us as is, I think it cuts very deep for a lot of us. And it's a topic that is brought up in a lot of stages of our work, whether it's negotiations or whether it's outreach or whether it's, you know, presenting our work or talking about our work or chasing after the jobs that we want to do. For me, for a long time, if you would have taken photography away from me, thank God nobody can take it away from me, but if you would have taken photography away from me, I would have fallen into a very, very deep hole. And I had this realization quite a while ago that I wasn't really investing in who I was outside of my photography, because guys, I've been doing photography since I was 7 years old. And it has been truly the love of my life that has accompanied me through every stage of my life. And yet there's so many things that have absolutely nothing to do with photography that I love, that always felt not important enough. And because I made my hobby my career, I felt like a lot of the work that I was doing almost didn't count towards work or me being productive or me having to work at something, which ultimately led to me working all the time, never feeling like I could take a break, because if you get to enjoy your job, then it's almost like you're not supposed to be loving parts of this. And don't get me wrong, there's parts of my career that I have to like grit my teeth through because I don't feel like doing them, but large parts of it I absolutely love and they feel effortless to me. And because I was like, well, this is who I am, so then this is who I need to be 24/7. And let me tell you, that got me closer to burnout than anything else. And only recently, over the last couple of years, have I recognized that I need photography to just be a job every once in a while. Same as some of my friends that go to the office 9 to 5. When they get home, they get to leave the office, you know, outside of their home. And I hadn't created that kind of boundary for myself because I love photography so much. So that's the first section of this topic that I just wanted to share with you guys and encourage you guys to ask yourself, how much do I perceive myself outside of my identity as a photographer? Now, when I started working in the commercial fashion and beauty industry, I saw huge egos on set. It was nuts. And as photographers, we are in a natural position of power and we're in a natural position of control and leadership, which is important to be aware of. And this is whether it's just you and a model or you and a team of 20 or 40, or I've been on a set with 80 people. And I walked on and the producer was like, oh, PA's over there. And I was like, no, I'm the photographer. Like I give the I set the tone and the direction of this production alongside a lot of other people that were in the team. Obviously, none of us could do this without the help of others every once in a while. But the position of a photographer in general is one of power. And I recognized that very early when I started interning, where like you're put in your place very, very quickly. And I recognized that like, wow, the photographer is the person that actually gets respected by everyone. To take a look at our egos that are attached to that. And again, I'm not using the word ego in a completely negative sense, but just analyzing the nature of what we do, and also recognizing that there is something to be said about that feeling. I mean, me personally, just if I'm being really honest, I've always loved being in a leading position. I've always loved being a leader. I've always loved helping a team and a crew come together and all work together in order to create one grand final product that I know I wouldn't be capable of producing just on my own. I think that's absolutely magical. And for a long time, I actually had a big issue with identifying myself with that, because the way that I was brought up, for example, I was taught that it wasn't my place to be an alpha. It wasn't my place to know how to tell other people what to do. I had a huge issue with that. So it can go both ways. And then at the same time, I realized that I was genuinely good at it. And I also enjoyed it, and that there's obviously a good way as being egotistical. Um, I, over the course of my career, recognized that there was a lot of things that I was actively keeping myself from pursuing or from trying out, or that, yeah, that I was missing out on because of my ego, because I had this very strict um image in my head, or vision in my head, of how things should work out for me, how I was gonna get to this level of success that I was dreaming of, um, what my job should look like from the perspective of others. Again, like that literally is a definition of ego. And like, for example, when I was a couple years into shooting campaigns and working full time as a photographer, I love doing test shoots. I love doing collaborations. I love bringing a bunch of artists together just for the sake of creating something. And oftentimes there's absolutely no budget involved. I absolutely believe in paying artists whenever you can and whenever you have the means to do so. But there were so many people that I was friends with that were dying to just do something creative together. And then after a while, I felt like I wasn't allowed to do that anymore, because, well, now everybody thinks I'm this big shot. And if I ask them to come and do a photo shoot in my backyard, they're going to be like, wow, I guess Sophie isn't as successful as I thought they were. That is literally my ego telling me that that's what people would think of me, or that's how I need to be perceived by other people. Or if I still now to this day approach a makeup artist and ask them, hey, do you want to do a collab? But I don't have any money to pay you. Take it or leave it. I'm absolutely cool with them saying no. But for a while, I felt like, Sophie, you can never ever ask people to help you in any sense ever again, because my ego was telling me, oh, you've reached a level of perceived success, of how people perceive you as a professional, that you now have to uphold, no matter what it actually looked like behind the scenes, or what I really wanted to do, or what I really felt like doing. Is this resonating with you guys? I'd love to hear a little bit of feedback in the chat, of if some of this is hitting home for you. So I want you guys to think about what might be some things that you're actively stopping yourself from because of how you think others perceive you. And, this can be in an egotistical way. This can also be from a fear-based perspective. Literally every single coachee that I've ever had, for example, when it comes to the topic of outreach, have certain inhibitions around that. They're like, who am I to send 5 emails to the same person? Or my God, people are going to think I'm so annoying. Or if I go on social media and I talk about what I care about, people think I'm absolutely obnoxious. Whatever it is, I'm sure there's something. Jim is saying this is very universal stuff, especially I have to look like I have money because I have to look successful. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And Karina says, I'm a model, but last year very interested in developing in photography, but super stressed and afraid to start something serious. Okay, very interesting. And she says, and yes, I agree with Jim. That is very, very well. First of all, that's super cool. And that overlap of being a model and being a photographer is so, so, so valuable. A couple years into being a photographer, I started modeling as well, and it's made me a better photographer. And I know a lot of models that are absolutely amazing photographers. So that's a really cool dynamic that you have there. You say you're stressed and afraid to start something serious. Okay, so you perceive being a photographer as more serious than being the model. That's very interesting. Why is that? Is that because of who you think other people perceive a photographer to be? Or does it have to do more with the position of responsibility? Jim says, I don't model, but I agree. That extra insight is very helpful. Absolutely. Karina says that very important that you think that you know how to work in this industry, so you should be a good photographer. That you think that you know how to work in this industry. Oh, you mean when I model? Yeah, I mean, even when I was modeling, like my ego came to the forefront there as well, where I felt like it was probably more of like an imposter syndrome almost thing. But speaking on the topic of ego, when I was still an intern, and then later I worked as a lighting tech and as a digital technician on really big commercial sets, they would always make me stand in for the lighting test because I was the only female in the whole photo crew, and most of the talent that we were shooting were female. So they always wanted to test the light on female bone structure. So they always made me stand in, and then the clients would come on set and they'd see my lighting test and they'd be like, you should do this, you should be a model. Now, I know I'm not your classic typical model from like what models had to be 10 years ago, but I always thought it was interesting. It felt like such an adventure to be in front of the camera and get to contribute to the production in that sense. But at the same time, I observed the objectification of most of the talent we worked with and the complete stripping away of their voice and of their position of power, while the photographer was like God on set. And everybody was fawning over him and making sure he had everything he needed. And, at a Blink's moment, sorry, that's not even a term, like, at the ready, anything he could possibly need, which I understand the crew is there to make his job easier so that he can focus on what he's there to do. But everybody respected him so much. And from my perspective as a young assistant, I felt like the models aren't being respected at all. So for a long time, I thought, why would I ever want to aim to be put in the position of the model when I can work towards holding the position of power that the photographer gets? And I respect models so much. I think it is one of the toughest job in many aspects. And only later on did I feel safe enough to pursue modeling myself because of the modeling agency that I got signed to and because of what they stand for and how they have their models back. But the way that our industry is set up for a long time, you know, you get to be the person with the big ego on set when you're the photographer, but not as the model. And um, I only recognized that a little bit later. And I have been on many, many sets where really big inflated egos were a true hindrance to the production. And it was a very male dominated space. And this sort of like saving face or never letting others see you making a mistake or always wanting to be the most respected person or needing to constantly prove yourself. Ultimately, it felt almost silly from my perspective, getting to see these grown adults be so childish in a sense and get so carried away with how they wanted to look and how they wanted to be perceived rather than focusing on, my God, how lucky are we that we get to be in this environment? What an extraordinary kind of job to have. Like, it's not open heart surgery. We are here to literally make art and be creative and like photograph shoes or something. Like, how freaking fun is that? And then to see these adult people be so egotistical was kind of funny. And honestly, after a while I started working on female dominant sets or all female crews, and all of a sudden none of that was there anymore, which I was like, I'm not saying that females don't have an ego, but the dynamic was very interesting. And I'm not saying that egos are a male typical thing, but in very male dominated spaces, there was definitely a lot of ego. There was a lot of like needing to prove yourself and wanting to be respected, which isn't necessarily just their fault, but I think it's a fault of the hierarchical structure that we work under. But it's interesting to think about. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Jim says, imposter syndrome is an epidemic. Oh my God, it is such an epidemic. I saw it everywhere in tech when I was building websites, and now I find it's all over photography. I'm not using the right camera, the right lens. Everyone judges me. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Karina says, thank you for your words. You're so welcome. And Jim also says, too many men are taught we have to be in control. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And what do we teach men when they feel that threatened? We teach them to either be aggressive or become more dominant, or at the most, like, do not show any kind of weakness. And I was in a lot of situations on set where something would happen and it wasn't my fault, but before we even tried to fix the problem, willing to do that. And it's in those very high pressure, high stress, fast paced environments where everything feels very dramatic. And it's hard to preserve that perspective of, guys, none of this is a life or death situation. And I think that's when egos come to the forefront a lot, especially on set environments. One other thing, you mentioned imposter syndrome, which I'm so happy that you're bringing that up. And with, being so attached to how we need to be perceived by others, in order to look successful. I hear this from my coachees all the time, that they're like, oh, like I could try this, but I don't really allow myself to try it, or I'm scared to go out with this thing because of what others might think of me. And comparison, I think, is a huge fuel to the fire in that aspect, where we all have photographers that we idolize to that position where they are at, like just in this moment now. I compare myself to photographers that are in their 50s all the freaking time. They have like 30 years of experience in the industry on me. And yeah, of course, they're shooting so many jobs that that's all they have to show of themselves in order to be successful, have a large following, you know, whatever it is. And I'm over here like, I can't post a video about my coaching business because that makes me less cool, or that shows others that I have to try harder than the photographer that has 500,000 followers and just gets to post their Gucci campaigns every single week, okay? But I'm like, I have no idea how that photographer got there. And there is no straight path to being successful as a photographer as well, which is why we do this program, so that we can all find an authentic way of being intuitive about the way that we go after our success, because that's the only way that we'll genuinely get to enjoy ourselves along the way as well. And the truth is, guys, I fucking love teaching. I think this is so fun. So if people want to judge me for it, go ahead, you know, at this point, that's fine. But I definitely had to die a big ego death before I got here. Jim comments for giving feedback as well. I think this was so much fun. If you're interested, you can still sign up for the Money Master workshop, which is starting tomorrow. And if you're not, that's totally cool. Just keep doing your thing. Next week's Rich Artist Friday topic is going to be photography reels. I recently had a reel go viral and I've been gaining followers every single day because of it. And this was like a month ago, and it's still giving, and it's been seen by over 1 million people at this point, which is absolutely nuts to me. So I want to share what I learned about making reels as a photographer, because that was definitely a big mountain for me to climb before I started realizing what works and what speaks to people and how I can use it to my advantage to get more people to see my work, which I think we all love. So I hope you enjoyed this today. Karina says, thank you, love your energy, and thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you so much for taking it, Karina. And if you guys are looking for extra support in your career, hit me up for one-on-one coaching. My coaching consultations are for free. And I love you guys so much. I will see you next week. And I hope you have an amazing weekend. Mwah.